Could Newcastle United be about to have another Brazilian join Eddie's Samba party? Latest transfer leaks coming right up.
Celebrate. They have done it.
Hi everyone, back on my YouTube channel. It's Chris back with another Rumour Has It video where we're talking about players linked to the football club this coming transfer window. Now, this little mini transfer window hasn't been particularly exciting for Newcastle United. Other clubs have made moves. We've seen Manchester United sign Matheus Cunha, possibly even signing Mbeumo and even Gyökeres, which would be unbelievable, to be brutally honest with you. I don't know where the hell they found that money from. And Chelsea snag Liam Delap, and it also looks like they're about to get Gittins as well from Dortmund. So it's all moving on for these football clubs. And Newcastle United just seem to be sitting there quite quietly, extending contracts for some older players that are quite questionable. But we have been linked to a couple of long-term targets in the last few days. And these could be the players that we want to bring in. Eddie Howe's wanted these players for a while. And the whole kind of Mitchell versus Howe thing potentially has changed the dynamic and the focus of where our targets were coming from. Mitchell might have had an idea who he wanted to bring to the football club in agreement with the manager. The manager might have had a disagreement with that and had another bunch of players that he wanted to sign. And obviously, when the whole thing's broken down, Eddie's going to go back to his guys that he wants to bring in. And that maybe changed the lane Newcastle United have been in, hence the slow start to this little mini window. But let's talk about this player right now, because he has been linked for a long time, according to Fabrizio Romano, who I'm starting to think is a little bit of a serial shit stirrer, to be honest with you. You know, I see him popping up all the time. Here we go, and linking players left, right, and centre. This club likes that player and that player. You know, potentially unsettling players. It really makes me feel uncomfortable. The whole world of agents looking to get moves to the football clubs. A lot of these agents are probably getting a little bit of a backhander from clubs, you know, as well to push that narrative into the media, get those stories out to journalists. I think a lot of these stories that come out that we cover as content creators have probably been started by agents to journalists to try and whip up a frenzy and whip up a bidding war for their players or to get them better contracts. And it's the dark, ugly side of football for me, but it is one that exists, no doubt about it. And with the world of media that we have at our fingertips right now, these agents are everywhere. They've got their own podcasts, they've got their own YouTube channels, and they're just feeding stories left, right, and center out there to the media. So, you know, this doesn't surprise me. But Fabrizio Romano did link this lad to Newcastle and said it was guaranteed, and it didn't happen. So he's not always right, is he, as old Romano? But this is the kid we're talking about, and it is Joao Pedro of Brighton. Now, Xiao Pedro, 23 years old, Brazilian striker, had 3 caps, good pals with Bruno Guimaraes apparently as well. Now, let's get the good bit out of the way first. A good player, there is no doubt about it. He's got strength. He can hold the ball up quite well as a centre forward. He was a defensive midfielder in his youth days, so he can drop deep and get the ball on the spin and link up play really well. He's a very talented player in that regard. You know, when he gets in front of goal as well, he's fairly tidy in front of goal. His kind of goal ratio isn't brilliant. You know, if you look at this season, it's not too bad. You know, 27 appearances, 10 goals and 6 assists, but overall 61 goals and 208 appearances between 3 clubs. So he's not a prolific striker. In terms of the positions that he has played over his career, and again, it's one of those things like the Elanga one we spoke about the other day. It's the flexibility of this player that makes him appealing. So right across his career, 119 times he's played as a centre forward with 34 goals and 18 assists, 39 times as a left winger. My word, we've got so many left wingers. We should start wearing tweed as a kid, I think. Second striker, he's played 20 times with 10 goals. He's had a real good success rate playing as a withdrawn striker behind the main man, which is what the noise is about Eddie Howe potentially pitching the club to him. He has played as a right winger 4 times, and he's played a couple of times in midfield as well. But the story goes that Newcastle United are stepping up their interest in Xiao Pedro, and he's had a bit of a falling out with Fabian Herzl, which I'll get into in a minute, which is a little bit of a concern for me, if I'm brutally honest with you. But going back to the good side of the player, so this lad has been on the radar for a while. We tried to sign him when he left Watford and went to Brighton, but Brighton paid 30 million quid from him. Apparently, Brighton want to double their bubble. They want 60 million quid for this player. And that's kind of the going rate for a player. If you want a player who scored 10 goals and 27 appearances in the Premier League, you're probably going to have to pay the thick end of 60 million quid from him, especially when he's contracted until 2028. He's only on 50 grand a week, so I don't think the wages would be a problem at all there. But I would not be surprised with Brighton and Hove Albion wanting as much money for this lad as possible. They do very good business to Brighton, to be fair. But apparently the pitch goes that Eddie Howe's pitch to Joao Pedro, who has said he doesn't want to go somewhere and be a bench warmer. He wants to go somewhere and start games. And this is reportedly the pitch that Eddie's turned around and said to him, I don't really believe Eddie's pitching it out. He's quite a secretive guy. But apparently we're talking about potentially a change in formation, going to either a 4-4-2, where we have two up front with Isak and him, or a 4-2-3-1 system, where we sacrifice in midfield and play maybe Xiao Pedro behind Isak to break down low blocks. And if you go back to last season and probably season before that, that's kind of Newcastle United's kryptonite. That we're excellent when we're on the break. We're playing against an Arsenal or Chelsea or a Man United or a Liverpool, and we get them on the break on that 4-3-3 style with the width. The wide players pull out wide. Isak's got the space to spin and turn. We've got the three midfielders. Joe Linton's the powerhouse, and the two creative elements in Guimaraes and Tonali as well. So low block teams we really struggle in, and I do think we need a plan B for that. This whole five at the back thing didn't really work. We saw in the last game against Everton. I was there. It was one of the dullest games of the entire season. And I think if we'd been able to break down those low blocking teams, we could have even finished second in the Premier League, to be brutally honest with you. But we still finished the Champions League, so it's irrelevant, really, that argument. But it would be nice to have a player of Joao Pedro's quality and flexibility where we could change formations and obviously play in those ways to break those teams down. But so that's the good side of it. And his stats as well. We'll look at his good side of it, the stats. His goals to game ratio in his percentile, he's on 59th percentile because he's not had loads of goals, 10 and 27. But if you look at his assists, he's right up in the 88th percentile. His expected assists, 85th. Shot creation actions, 90 percentile. His key passing's 85 percentile. So he uses the ball really well, especially when he comes deep and spins in, and he can pop it out wide or slip it through to a midfield runner as well. Touches, 96 percentile. Progressive carries, 97. Now, we really need players that can carry the ball and get us up the park. So far, I've got Gordon, we've got Isak. Willock was very good at it, but really struggle with that with some other players as well. Successful take-ons, 90th percentile. So he's got a lot of skill. Xiao Pedro, really good close control, uses the ball really, really well. And fouls one, he's very high in the percentile. He does win a lot of free kicks as well. Shots on target aren't particularly great, and his shots numbers aren't great either. He's in the 19th and 14th percentile, but that's against centre forwards. This lad kind of floats a little bit between two different positions. I mean, he was playing behind Danny Welbeck quite a bit last season until he had his fallout with Fabian Hürzeler. But comparing him to Alexander Isak in the radar grids may be a bit unfair by Mark there, to be fair, because Alexander Isak's had a brilliant season and he's amazing. But you can see there is areas where Joao Pedro outscores Isak, where that's more the selfless side rather than the selfish side of a centre forward. So I won't dwell on that one too much. So do I think this kid would be a good addition to Newcastle United? Absolutely, I do. I'm not sure he's worth 16 million quid, but that is the going rate for a player of this kind of ability. As I say, the one thing that concerns me about Xiao Pedro is probably the reason why I think this signing is probably going to be quite a plausible one to push through. Now, all of this noise about Wilson having a pay-as-you-go kind of contract as the third striker, that would make sense if Xiao Pedro is coming in as the secondary striker. So that would be probably not a bad thing in all fairness, but you wonder what's going to happen with Asula and Sean Need, maybe a couple of loan deals for them, or maybe Asula is seen as right wing cover as well if we get Alanga. But so Fabian Hürzeler had a big fallout with Pedro, and what he said, we dropped him from the side. He banned him completely from the final game of the season against Spurs after a training ground incident. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but what Hürzeler did say is that he missed the match due to principles and values that are non-negotiable. Now, that's a little bit of a concern for me, because one thing that Newcastle United are, and what Eddie Howe has created as football club, is this harmonious feeling amongst the team. And if Xiao Pedro has got a little bit of something about him where he's going to kick off and have brawls with people in training or go against the grain like that. And I really like Hürzeler, and I think he's a very good young manager, and I think he shares a lot of similar traits with Eddie Howe. But we could have said the same thing about Anthony Gordon, in all fairness. Anthony Gordon came to Newcastle with a bad reputation. We all said, oh no, what the fuck, and this guy's a prick. And Anthony Gordon's been brilliant, really. And Newcastle United, for the majority of the time he's been there. Yes, last season was a bit fishy and a bit squiffy because of the old Liverpool links. But generally, mentality-wise, ironically enough, outside of the stupid red card against Brighton. Gordon's been pretty good. He's been very respectful, relaxed. He's matured a lot at Newcastle. And maybe Eddie Howe can do the same thing for Joao Pedro as well. But I think he's done at Brighton. I don't think that the player and that manager can kind of get that back on side. And when that happens, it's time to move on as a player. He's 23 years old, Joao Pedro. He doesn't want to be, sitting rotting away on the bench because maybe his pride stopping him from apologising to the manager or his teammate or whatever it may be. But, we've seen a lot of players move on from Brighton to two other clubs, in the past and done really well. The likes of Basuma and, McAllister as well and Trossard have all moved on to other clubs and done quite well. And Joao Pedro could be the latest one. I mean, I love the way Brighton do business, to be honest. I think we should just go and sign their scouting network because they seem to find these amazing players, get them for buttons, and then they can sell them on for double the profit. So maybe we should just go and sign the Brighton scouting network, to be brutally honest with you. But yeah, this would be an interesting one. I think 60 million quid, is a lot of money, but it's probably the going rate for a player. Would he get goals in the Premier League? Yes. Would he give us a good option to rest Isak? Yes. You can play him as a number 9. Could he play as a secondary striker behind Isak? Yes. So you're ticking all the boxes there in terms of the player. Is his attitude potentially a concern? Maybe. So that is a concern. Is there better out there on the continent? Maybe. 60 million quid for him, for Pedro, who can't get in the Brighton team. And then you're talking about what's the report? Is it 65 for Gyökeres, who's 40 odd goals in Europe this season or something like that. So you got to start asking yourself the question is, would you get better bang for your buck on the continent than you would do in the Premier League? The answer is probably yes. But if our manager wants to buy Premier League players, then there ain't a great deal we can do about it. He's going to buy Premier League players. That's potentially why him and the sporting directors don't get along, because they want to go across to Europe and look at players that maybe he doesn't want to look at. But I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I'd love to find out and know about it, because it would probably calm a lot of our nerves, a lot of our concerns, but we'll never know, I'd imagine. But Xiao Pedro, let us know in the comments below what you think about this signing. Would you be happy with him? Would you take him? I think he'd be a good player. I think he would add something to the squad 100%, certainly more than what Wilson can offer right now. His attitude would concern me, and changing a formation that works well for us maybe is a concern. But in certain games, I think it's probably well overdue. But there's a lot of taking, a lot of digest there. But we'll see what happens with these two players, him and Elanga, in the next few days at Newcastle United. Hopefully, we will get a couple of players. And I still think Mark Gahey looks like he's going to be a Newcastle United player this summer. I do believe that. I think he should have been last summer. And maybe there's been a gentleman's agreement behind the scene with Palace that they won't stand in his way next summer to move on. But a lot of players being linked to the club right now. We're not really doing anything as it stands, but I'm sure Newcastle will spring into action at some point, whether it be the second part of the window, not the first. But let us know in the comments what you guys think. Like and subscribe. Keep it evermore. Help get us to the next milestone and on to 11,000. Thanks for watching. Have a belter. We'll see you later. Cheers.
Heroes celebrate. They have done it.